Who are we here to talk about today?
Talking about David.
Talking about our son, Dayvin Kendall Johnson.
Yes. And I had a name for him the entire time carrying him. His name was going to be Derek. But he did not look like a Derek. And when I got to really hold him and talk to him, he was a Dayvin, and I don't know where I got the name. I didn't get it through books and stuff. He just was a Dayvin. That was the name that I felt that came to me, that was in me. And then, there's some characteristics under that name that fit him to a T perfectly. They would come in with the card, they would say, "Oh, how's Dayvin doing? Davin's doing good today." So finally, right before they sent the birth certificate off, I said, "I need to see that, I need to do something." And I changed the spelling and added that Y. So there's no way you can't say Dayvin, Dayvin. You know, he started walking and talking early. One of the early memories, when he was little, somebody, like not quite two, learning to talk. He had to do something, and instead of just saying no, he said, "Actually, no." What 2-year-old uses the word actually? And that always stuck with me. Actually, no. I also remember when he first started kindergarten, his very first day of kindergarten, questioning things, questioning the status quo, so to speak. Even in high school and stuff, he was the first one to wear braids in his hair, and they suspended him for a time because he refused to take the braids out. But I was in sync with him. I agreed with him. I mean, other people wore their hair the way they wanted. Why couldn't he wear his in braids? He challenged the knowledge. And especially back then, that was not acceptable. So he was a pioneer, a trailblazer, ahead of his time in terms of, back then you studied and did what you were told. In terms of whatever you were taught, that was what was. And he always challenged, especially history. Especially history. He always challenged whatever they were teaching. And he would go look it up and stuff, I mean, they didn't have internet like we do now, but we had encyclopedias and stuff. And he would look up and he'd say, "Mom, I never heard of this. Have you? Or why would this happen? Or, what about this side? And the whole thing around Thanksgiving and the Pilgrim and Indians, he just, just a lot of those things. But yeah, that too. You could speak to him challenging all the time. We used to say he would make a good lawyer, because he would debate anything. He could argue anything and come out looking like he was right, valid points.
Sound like me. Sound like me. He and I never forget when he came to the house and he and I were talking about something. And I think every 10 words was why. Why? How can you prove this? How do we know that we are right? I believe he searched for truth, and he wanted you to be truthful as well. And if you weren't, if he found out that you weren't, you could see the effect on him.
There were 7 children in my family. I had 6 other siblings. And all of my siblings, I had 4 brothers who he was close to as well. And all of them died at a young age. So he experienced a lot of death at an early age, And I think that too affected him or impacted to make him who he was as well, about caring about the real things, and the real things in life. He definitely was not a on the surface person, so to speak, and definitely nothing fake and phony about him. He didn't have time for that, Life was too short. And I think he learned that through, his experiences, and lost his grandparents really early as well. Actually, both sides. And he was very protective of his younger brother, Brandon. He was, and I think Brandon sees that more now as an adult himself, as opposed to just the big brother telling him what to do or watch. No, but that he truly was looking out for him, and trying to protect him from things.
One of my earliest memories of David is when I was really little. I don't even really remember the house very well, but he, I guess it was in school, made me a like cape. And I just remember jumping up and jumping down the steps with that cape, thinking I could fly. And I remember being told that he had made that for me. So that is probably one of my earliest memories. I wasn't even 5 years old at that point. Yeah. Yeah, we have quite a few years between us, so I always, like, he was always a big kid to me, so I always kind of looked up to him, just for everything, because he was my older brother. Yeah.
I remember once when you had to write about who you admired most, who you wanted to most be like, admired, and you had picked Dayvin. I still have that thing he wrote, that essay he wrote.
Really?
Wanting Dayvin instead of me.
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I kept it.
Wrestling.
He was very popular, very, very popular, and I don't mean just with the girls, with guys too. He's just a popular person. He was involved in wrestling, and he won state championship before. He was involved in football,
Track.
and track. Yeah, the sports, all the sports. He was really into, healthy body, and he was good at them. He won, what do they call that back then? It was Mr. Touchdown. It was a competition, but that one was like a popularity competition, and he had the highest votes ever for that Mr. Touchdown thing. I don't remember the exact title, but he won that, and because that was popularity for support and stuff. He also won awards for football for his athleticism, not popularity. Especially wrestling. He, like I said, he got to state championships and won. Yeah, sports was a big part of his life.
Either going to football games or wrestling matches, wrestling meets in town or out of town. Lamar always had basketball. Dayvin also had baseball. So it was always doing something that was like involving one of his competitions or sports events, and always traveling a lot. And I remember doing that a lot, traveling for those. And how excited my mom would always get, and how rowdy my family was, and how nobody else would be screaming the way my family was.
I remember him back when he just had that kill every girl around grin, the nice cornrows. Back when he was still playing football and wrestling. He used to take us out all the time and play different games, keep our agility right, do things that we had no clue what he was even talking about at the time, given we were 6 or 7. Oh yeah, come out here and do this, so to make your agility right, and do that and do this, and it's like, what? Whatever, but it was fun, so we did it.
I have to mention
Please.
how much he was a Steelers fan to this day. He was a true diehard Steeler fan. He always watched every game, and if they lost, it was like he was out on that field playing himself. You did not talk to him for a while. I mean, it was personal. He was so into it. And then if they won, it was a good day. It was a good day. So, yeah.
He and I got it. I'm a Raven fan, and he's a Steeler fan. And we got into a discussion. And I'll never forget, he had Pittsburgh slippers, Pittsburgh toothbrush. Did he have I think he had a robe as well. I said, get out of the house. And we both laughed at him. But he was a diehard, what do you call them?
Terrible towel.
Terrible towels. And, but he was dedicated to Pittsburgh. And again, when he stuck with something, until it showed the opposite of what he believed in.
He was really into football. That was one of his favorite things was football. And he was very popular. He really enjoyed hanging out with all the other kids, and he just really was that kid that everybody wanted to be with. That was his claim to fame. Everybody wanted to hang out with him. Everybody wanted to be around him. He was really. I'm trying to figure out a way to say this. He had that personality that people flocked to. My son, Justin, is related to him. And that was one of the first ways that we got to know each other. Yolanda and I have been close for almost 35 years. So I've known the family since the kids were little. I've known Brandon since he was 5. So, and Dayvin since he was about, I'd say 15.
Before he had moved out, going for college, was when he had really first, from my recollection, first started really getting into the kung fu and martial arts. He was always athletic, but this was kind of like a new spin, and all I ever remember him watching were the subtitles. I mean, old Chinese and Japanese, karate and kung fu films, and it was not really like a joke, but it was just like I mean, an entire bookshelf, volumes of old, badly edited, badly dubbed classic kung fu movies that people go crazy for now. That I had no real understanding of appreciation of what he was showing me. So I remember that always just being funny to me. Like, why are you watching these old horrible movies? And then when he started showing me some of the kung fu he was learning and the applications and certain disciplines and how that tied into what he was watching, then it all kind of clicked, and it became more interesting, and it kind of got me into different forms of martial arts, and even just watching the old kung fu films.
When he was 16 and my boys were only 2 and 3, I told him at the time I thought he should become a lawyer because he loved to argue so much. He liked to debate. He really liked to debate. So that was one of my favorite first memories of him, was his debating skills.
One of the things, whenever Dayvin was happy or excited about something or liked something, he wanted everybody to be a part of that. I mean, even down to simple stuff like a TV show. If he thought that was one of the best shows, he wanted everybody to be aware of it and at least watch it once, and turn people onto it. Food, a good meal, he just absorbed every piece, every bit of that, and then he wanted others to have that same experience. So yeah, that was
Could you
part of who he was.
tell him about I Hear You?
Oh yeah. Well, that was one of the phrases that we tease now about that Dayvin had. Like you said, he would never tell someone they were wrong in his own way. If he disagreed, his way of letting you know he disagreed was he would say, "I hear you." You'd be saying da 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 da, but this da 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 da, and he would just simply say, "I hear you," which didn't mean he agreed with you, or disagreed. He's just letting you know, I hear what you're saying. I hear you. And so we make a joke of it now because he used to do that a lot, but you knew what he meant when he said, I hear you.
As opposed to my however.
Yeah, I hear you.
As he got older, I noticed that he really kept his family together. He was very instrumental in keeping in touch with all of his family members, like his cousins and his aunts. He would keep in touch with them and would talk with them at least once a week and make sure that he would check in on them and make sure that everybody was doing okay.
What I remember with Dayvin was him always having a large group of friends and always having some kind of event, always doing something. Yeah, he was always kind of central with me growing up to like family things or anything happening. I don't want to say it was like centered around Dayvin, but like he would either instigate it, like, you know, try and be like, oh, we need to do this, or it was because of like one of his sporting events and the whole family would come out together to be supportive.
So, you know, he was always relevant. He was always there in my life. I remember since I was, 2 or 3, I say great cousin, but more of a brother. Absolutely.
He really was there for Justin when I needed him to be, and he really was there for him and for me. And he would check on Justin and make sure Justin was doing okay and doing what he needed to be doing. And I really, really appreciated that. That meant so much to me because Justin needed somebody from his family. And I feel like Dayvin really helped him do that. And he did the same thing for his other cousins and like I said, his whole family. He was just always there for anyone who needed him. And that just meant so much to me and to Justin and to the rest of his family.
I just spent Christmas in jail. And then when I came home, Yolanda was the one that picked me up because it was like, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning or something ridiculous. And she was up, Dayvin was up, so he got her up. And long story short, he knew in his mind that they were going to be the ones picking me up. And on Christmas every year, it's tradition that Yolanda makes lasagna. And, Dayvin, that's one of his favorite things in the world. Lasagna, cigars, martial arts, football, as far as favorite things in the world, crab legs as well. Yeah, so it was just very interesting to me how I go to his house probably 3 days after Christmas, when everyone's eating out of this lasagna multiple times at this point, and he's just sitting there with this big grin on his face with the middle piece. Like, here you go, man, I need you to be here. I'm like, dude, what is this? He's like, oh, it's the middle piece. It's lasagna. That was some bang. She made some good lasagna this time. You gotta have. I was just, blown away because it was like, dude, this is your favorite meal. How you know I was gonna be here? But in his mind, he had already figured all that out. That's just Dayvin. I know he's gonna be getting home, and so I'm just wait up. I'm just wait for the call, and when he calls, that's just how Dayvin worked. So he was more of they say the strongest people, they deal with the most things, and I believe that. Another testament to his character. A lot of times people don't get the credit they deserve whenever they're as strong as they are. And Dayvin, like I said, to a fault, he'll be strong,
He definitely was the glue to keep the family together. He was all about family and being there for family and for friends. He was people who knew him would always say, if you knew him, if you were his friend, you were his friend till the end. He would always back you and be behind you.
I went through a tough period when I was getting divorced, and I was moving out of the house we lived in, and I wanted to move my stuff when the kids weren't there, and David said, "What time?" I got a truck, and the two of us literally moved me out and moved me into my new place. Again, I couldn't thank him enough for that, because the kids did not have to see me moving out, and all he said was, "When do you need me?"
Well, he was always the one that basically like kept everybody together to a degree. He was always like cousins that I haven't talked to in way too long. He would just either call me up or show up and be like, "Oh, hey, cousin so and so is doing this and this and this, and they're doing better than last month with this and this." And I'm like, I haven't talked to this person in forever. And he was always keeping me updated and talking to different members of the family all over the country. So that was one thing. Is he definitely kept me more in touch with the family and kept people kind of together in that regard. All throughout.
I was thinking about the time that his brother Keith, and it was so funny. Look at David, like you let him know he's the big brother. He would listen to this, listen to that. He would direct you. He would take charge, but he did it in love, And they kind of act alike. And I sat there and laughed, What a sight to see, And I'm glad that he got a chance to meet his brother. And also, we had a family reunion in Maryland. When he saw, we have a big family, have family in 20 some states, in about 4 countries. And we had a reunion, and you can tell by his response when he told you.
Yeah, when he came home, the thing, "Mom, I got so many cousins, but I have so many girl cousins. They are beautiful, but they're my cousins. I can't talk to them." He said so many beautiful women, but he couldn't rap to any when they were his cousins. But yeah.
People that like his cousins that he knew were having struggles, he would call them and make sure that they were doing okay, or if they needed anything, or if they needed a contact, like for something, he would make sure that they had what they needed. And he was very good about keeping the family together.
He could be wherever he is doing whatever he's doing. If his mom's traveling, he's on the phone with her faithfully. He knows what time she's supposed to be, where she's supposed to be, and he's checking in on everything. Same thing with his brother, even though it probably annoys the mess out of Brandon. That's just the way he always is and always was, And like I said, sometimes to a fault, sometimes to the point where, people would feel like he's overbearing or too protective but that's David, he lost people and he's seen things, and that's just the way he was. You're not going to fly halfway across the country and not let me know you landed and you're where you're supposed to be. It's not an option, You're not going to just go over here and be with this guy for a first date and I don't know what you're doing, how everything's going, how does he seem, it's not an option. And as people look back in life, I think they can appreciate it, especially as the way the world's starting to turn out today.
Dayvin was very, very close to his cousin who I raised. He lived with me, and he was like his brother, okay? He was killed at a dance. And it devastated Dayvin. They were very, very close, and it impacted him a lot. it was a really bad time and rough time for him. And the thing is, the kid who killed my nephew, they had a trial, and no offense, it was a small town and all this. And anyway, the kid got off, although he had stabbed my nephew 14 times at a dance. But anyway, he was found not guilty. Had a really, really good lawyer. Well, Dayvin had a really hard time accepting that. And knowing the history, as we've talked about, how he is in the search for truth and what is real, he just had a really hard time with that. And the kid was free, declared innocent, and running the streets and still causing havoc. And he at one point had made a threat to one of my nieces, another one of his cousins, and he had a hard time with that. And
it's in your heart, it's in your head, and sometimes it's just best to stay away from things. But, you know, he felt that he had to do something on a particular night.
so there was a time at the festival where there was an occurrence between them that did not go well. And again, it affected who he wound up being as well. But yeah, that had a big impact on his life.
A lot of people look down on it, but then I say, you know, there's plenty of people who don't even have that heart, who don't even have that courage, who don't just say there's no way you're going to do that. Not in my face, not today, you know. I mean, how many years, months did he have to go through that? We lose my cousin for 2.5 years. It speaks for itself. The way, because a lot of people like to beat around the bush and not say what it is. I mean, he felt that way. It was in him. He didn't shy away. He wouldn't tell you any different. Now we go back to when Dayvin came out of prison. So he's obviously a lot more mature, a lot more developed in certain areas than before he went to prison. And just all around basic world knowledge, like, you know, Dayvin was never really like a philosopher before he went to prison. He was more of a debater, but never like on anything in particular, just to debate. But afterwards, you can definitely see wisdom, knowledge just pouring out of him like a fountain. And, you know, so not everything in life is even as bad as it seems. More a blessing than a curse, I'd say. As far as that went, he left the situation immediately. My adopted father, was the one that picked him up from the airport. I called one of my friends, and we were immediately at a China buffet where he was at. Surprised them both. Pretty cool reunion. Just sat around, talked, ate. Just the three of us, chilled, you know. And then, yeah, you know, from there, Dayvin just really took on with the martial arts as he got down here, getting into politics, using his intelligence to the best of his ability, you know, with what he had against him. You know, not everybody wants to look into the situation or the facts regarding the case. They just look at what it is and say, oh, you get cut the shorthand in life sometimes. But, you know, he made the best of it. And still, you know, he was able to touch enough people with enough power to be sitting in a place doing an interview called the Dayvin's Wellness Center. Speaks volumes, in my opinion.
There was an incident where he was told that he pretty much was promised that he could get into a particular field. And I did tell him, I don't think it's right. I said, well, you just check into it. And he came all the way from Florida to Maryland just to find out that they had lied to him. And I think that, I know it hurt him. I know it did, because it hurt me too, because and this was dealing with the government. He was hurt, you know. And I felt, I remember us sitting down and we didn't cry, we just were quiet for a while, but I think we were thinking the same thing. But he wanted you to be truthful with him, you know, and
I think that's part of why too he was so into politics when he was, because he wanted, it was like, if, you know, the best way to make change is be the change, get inside the system. And I think with the politics and his stance politically and being so involved, that was his way of trying to do that as well.
and if he was with you, he was with you. He was with you. So I admired that. I really did. You know.
Very politically minded. He got involved in local politics, and a lot of the politicians knew who he was, respected him, and he made himself known. He like I said, he got involved, and you know, boy, sometimes we want to get everybody involved, you know, with anything. He's not one you had to motivate for that. He was already motivated to get involved and do it.
I really, really got into politics, and he had always been the one kind of talking about it, and I never really cared. He had always, through all of college and even from high school, been very interested and active in politics. And so that kind of brought us common ground, is always talking about whatever happened in Washington, because I was still living in DC at the time, so whatever's happening there, world news, and just general politics. Yeah, that and we did that a lot. We talk a lot just about the different politicians, what they're doing, what else is happening in the world. We agreed on most things, but there were things we didn't. But that was actually that was the more fun was debating and just discussing things that we didn't agree on. He is an excellent, I shouldn't use the word fighter, debater. He is an excellent debater. And I think I'm not too bad myself.
Yes.
So together, that was always. At one point, I think we even had a conversation where neither one of us even agreed with what we were arguing. It was just a matter of winning the argument. Like we took positions that we don't agree with and still fought them.
When he was in college, he wrote for the college paper. He did the sports section for the college paper there. He was also part of, I don't know if it was president of student union.
Okay.
You know, again, real active in what was happening on campus. You know, that was part of who he was. He changed his major several times, from history to political science to psychology. Because those were the things, just from what we're saying, is what interested him and what he was about. Truth, you know, and those three areas are where people search, you know, most about truth in terms of the world.
Could you tell them about him in Chinese?
Oh, yeah, thanks, good. Yeah, he was avid with the Chinese language, with the Chinese culture, with the Chinese people. He could speak Chinese fluently. He could write and read Chinese very well. And one of his
Mandarin
dreams,
specifically.
Yeah, Mandarin specifically. And one of his dreams was to go to China someday and live in China. But you know, that didn't come to pass. But yeah, it'd be interesting. We'd go out to eat at the Chinese restaurant, and you know, the workers would be talking Chinese, and Dayvin would just be listening, you know, and catching what they say. And one day, the two waitresses were right at our table, standing there, and they were talking to each other, and they were talking about some of the people. And so, of course, he didn't like that. So he started speaking Chinese to them, and she like almost dropped her tray at a surprise that he could speak it, and that I guess he spoke it well. And so then they start having a conversation. But yeah, and actually he was fluent in Chinese, in Arabic. What's the other one? Believe it or not, Spanish was the least of those, which is one of the most common languages. But it was Chinese, Arabic. There's one more. It was 3. Sorry, it's not coming, and not English. I mean, beside English. But yeah, Chinese was his heart. He could speak that and go. I still have books where he was writing things in Chinese and communicating in Chinese. But yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I remember in his room he had a little tablet, and he was just writing and writing. And I said, "Wow,
How do you learn how to do that even, so well? Yeah.
And he also his spirituality. He knew there was a God, and he searched and searched. I think he was a Muslim.
Yes, he was a Muslim for a
He
while.
talked about God, and he and I sat down and talked, went through some scriptures, and he was searching, trying to find truth. And he said everybody, which is true, everybody has their own version of truth. He was forever seeking truth.
Yeah, he had joined the Muslim religion for a while, but he did eventually move away from that. But again, in his search, even the Mormon church, at one time I was kind of attending that, and he was small, and it was so interesting, and I don't know if we want this, but I was in a meeting talking with them and stuff, and we were talking about Dayvin and Dayvin's birthday being the same as one of, I don't know, Joseph or one of their prophets, and so I had said, oh wow, so that's the same day as Dayvin's birthday. Maybe there's something really special about that. Maybe Dayvin's gonna be one of the prophets or something, and got this really weird look about and all this. Long story short, back in the day at that time, a black person couldn't hold office. And I didn't know that. And I knew there were looks. And so when that came out, and I was like, oh, because June 9th, I was trying to make this connection. And after that, of course, I was not part of that. And in all honesty, that's not how they are today. But back then, that was something. Again, I was thinking Dayvin's specialness and that those dates were trying to ring true to me. He had different jobs throughout his life. But even through all those years and different jobs, he really had the same cluster of friends that he grew up with and friends that he made in adulthood that all he was connected to and stayed close to and always helped in their situations. In his younger day, yeah, he was quote a player. I mean, he had girlfriends and all that stuff, and the girls loved him. And as he got older, when he dated, it was more in search of.
We again had the debates and the discussions and the just the intellectual things, that he was so good at. And that's what drew me to him, I think, because he was so good at those things and so good at being around other people. He's like an old soul is something the way I would describe him. He was like an old soul. And it was a good time in our lives. It was a really good time in our lives. We really gelled and everything was going well. We were romantically involved. for about 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we also started the Kung Fu together. And that was that was very cool. We really enjoyed doing that together. He got into it a lot more than I did, and he really went to the black belt degree. I only got up to a green belt, and that's when I kind of hung up my my belt at that point. But he loved practicing that, and that was one of his favorite things to do, was doing the Kung Fu. That was, I mean, he would constantly be saying to me, come on, let's practice, let's do this, let's do that. And, you know, he really liked practicing and doing the Kung Fu. That was his favorite thing to do.
Well, gee, I met Dayvin, probably about 11, 12 years ago. A mutual friend that I've known for years, Michelle Foose, was my little girl's first grade teacher, and she was happening to be telling Dayvin that there was a Kung Fu teacher in Lehigh, Florida. And Dayvin did not believe her. So she said, no, you gotta go, and this guy's real. And so sure enough, Dayvin sheepishly came into the martial arts studio and sort of gave me the once-over, looked me over, and like I do with any potential student, I said, well, let me show you what we do here. Let's work out a little bit. And needless to say, I showed off a little bit because I wanted to impress him with Kung Fu. And it worked. He was very impressed, and he became a student. So, but he was so much more than that. He really, really gets involved in just about everything he does. And therefore, he became a junior instructor for me over time. Then, after that, I really began to rely on him as far as helping with other students, running the kids' class, and basically just doing whatever needed to be done. So he transitioned into but a assistant instructor for me, to really being a good friend. And then after we became friends, I really saw who he was, and inside and out. And I like to say we became brothers.
What was his heart was, you know, when he came to Kung Fu, and which was very personal for him. And unlike, you know, he would talk about karate, jiu-jitsu, some of those other things, and how Kung Fu was so very different and was right on target for him in his beliefs, and the whole spiritual aspect of Kung Fu as well. Sansu, that whole piece.
And we would practice and do all that kind of stuff. He kept me on my toes.
It was a really enlightening for both of us, really, because that was our true first connection. When he looked at me and said, okay, I get it now. I get what you Kung Fu guys are doing, and he wanted to be part of it. He jumped in with both feet. So I think that was really one of the catalysts to our true friendship. And when he passed, you know, at that time he had become my best friend. And he's a people person, and people even meant young people. We had a class of children from age 6 to 12, and I truly believe he connected with every single one of them. He took an interest to them. He would give them sort of what we call Kung Fu homework assignments. They did it. They listened to him. They responded to him. So as an instructor in a martial arts studio, that's invaluable. You know, because of course, if nothing else, it makes the parents really happy. But it was more than that. He was a true leader. As an example, one of the things we had never done in our kids' class was entered any tournaments. Dayvin looked at the criteria, what do we need to do, and he got in, and almost every kid went into a tournament. and they had more fun. And that was all because of David. All because of him. We never did it before. I never even thought about it. So he takes a ball and truly runs with it. And again, that was just invaluable to our school.
He was so into wanting to work with the kids and wanting to expand the business. He talked to Master Neil at the time about, they would have meetings and discussions about what they could do to, increase the number of people coming to the studio, and how they could, just do more with the kids. And he would go out and he'd be there early so that he could work out with the kids and do those things. And he really just became a part of the studio. That was really a big part of his life, was doing that stuff. And yeah, I don't think there was maybe once, maybe twice that he missed, but he rarely missed, and he really enjoyed doing it. That was just a part of who he was. That's what he became. And that was, and Sifu Vinny was there, and they would talk, and he would go an hour early just so he could be there with them. And it just meant so much to him that he could help and he could do those things.
Let's see if I'll remember that. That's 3 different forms.
So we did close the studio. Again, that was around the time I was getting divorced. Our other person who worked with us, Vinny, moved to North Carolina. We had lost a few students for various reasons, and we didn't really put the effort into replacing the students. So all things considered, we decided to close the studio. I believe that was 2012.
He was a little more withdrawn, but he was still with his family. He was still like helping out his aunt and cousins, and like I said, it was just I think that he really missed the studio. I think he really missed being with the kids and having a purpose. I think that really that meant a lot to him, and I think that he was missing that. It was a hole. There was a hole there for him, and I know that weighed heavily on him. That weighed heavily on him those last few months.
But again, David and I met on a regular basis, and then one day, it was maybe about 2015, we said, why don't we open up another studio? And by that time I was ready. We had closed, the studio had been closed for a few years, and we'd started to literally talk about plans. We brought in a couple of other of the old students, and including you, I believe, and we decided to, let's see, what do we need to do? Okay, we need to find a location, we need to do this, do that. And David, again, got into it, and I was kind of motivated to continue the studio.
I remember when he was really excited to have to get his Cadillac. He loved that car. He was so proud of that Cadillac. He was telling me all the things he was doing to it. He was really excited because it seemed like for the first time for him in quite a few years, he had like a really nice upward trajectory that he could see in front of him, and it was all like materializing, which had been a turnaround. I mean, always optimistic and positive, but it was like it was actually things were coming into fruition. And then he started doing some things, and things started looking up for him.
On the day that Dayvin died, and some of you know this or have heard it, but on the day that Dayvin died was a great day. He and his brother Brandon were in the room just having a good old time, laughing and joking and carrying on. I mean, just the laughter in the house. And they were in Brandon's room, which was across from mine, just laughing, carrying on. And so I got up, I went in there trying to, be a part of it. Of course, they wanted their time. They didn't need me to be a part of it. But I said, oh, wow, this is so neat. So we're going to have a big dinner and, make it a good thing. And we did that. We had a great dinner and dessert. David even went and got ice cream for us. And it just was a really good day. And I'm glad my son Brandon, too, had that day as a memory, too, that it was a really good day till that night. But the last day with him was a really nice, really great day.
I just say I thank God for the time that I had with David. Sometimes we look at it in terms like minutes or hours. I don't look at it that way. I just look at it as a wrinkle in time where I got to get with my son, and I treasure those moments. That's all I can say on that.
Yeah.
That's what he was here for. He fought hard for what he believed in, and he was one of those guys where he just to a fault all the time. That's just big heart to a fault. And me, I don't know what happened or why it happened the night that we lost him.
Yeah, no, that night was that night was a little crazy because I had just moved back in to that house, not even a week before. It was like 5 days, like literally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not even a week before. And I woke up. Don't know why I woke. Like I jumped up. Don't know. I couldn't recall why I woke up, but I knew something was wrong. In retrospect, after talking to everyone, all that, I think the gunshot woke me up. I just didn't realize it when I woke up that I'd heard it. It was just I was jolted out of bed because I stood up and walked. I remember walking like towards my door, which was closed, and like just listening. And I was like, I know I woke up for something. Like something woke me up. I knew that much. I just didn't know what. And so I kind of like creeped up to the door, and just kind of was listening. And I didn't really hear anything, but then I did hear like a noise like at the other end of the house. So I waited a minute.
We keep talking about and saying, the type of person he was and some of the characteristics about him, about family, about friends, and that just carried him to the very end because that's exactly how he died, protecting me and his brother. I don't know what people know or anything, but the breaking in, David was trying to keep them out of our house because his brother and mother was there and lured them around to the house, and that's, and they shot him because they wanted to come in, break in, and he wasn't allowing that because we were there, and that's how he died. Again, protecting and helping others.
And then that's when I heard like the door open or something like that, and I walked out of my bedroom, and that's when I heard my mom scream. So it all just kind of happened. Like he had come in through the one way, through the back, the sliding door and the back door, and that's what I think I'd heard when I was standing by the door. I think that's what I heard was him climbing over that way. Because then when I heard the door, which I later found out was somebody leaving the house, he had made his way into my mother's room, which was on the other side of like the main space. And that's so like as she's seeing him, she screams, and that me coming out the door, it just kind of all put it together. But yeah, that was, I mean, that was really it. Like the being driven awake, kind of trying to assess the situation, and then running out. And at that point, I already knew. So really, it was just trying to get my mother away from him, and then taking her outside. And yeah, by the time we got outside, there was nothing outside. I don't think I even, like, I knew the door. I knew somebody had left through the door because it was wide open, and I like was aware of the movement. But by that point, like, I didn't see the car or anything, or them leaving or anything like that. But yeah, by the time I had gotten her to like get up, everybody had already gone outside, and the ambulance had showed up not too shortly after that, or the police had showed up. Honestly, at this point, I don't remember who showed up first.
When he was no longer in our lives, there was a hole. There was so much missing. Justin couldn't talk about it. It was so hard for him. He lost his best friend, and that was very difficult for him. It was difficult for all of us, but he couldn't speak about it, and that because he talked to Dayvin every day. The two of them talked every day, and that was real difficult because he lost somebody that he could confide in and that he counted on. So that was real difficult, and it was hard because I also saw Yolanda going through it. So I just tried to be there for everybody as best as I could, but there was definitely a huge loss in the community that we had, in our family, and it just took a lot of time to finally come to terms with it, or to be at peace with it. There was just, it was so abrupt, and it was just such a loss.
Well, we were talking about his commitment to others and his popularity, that when he did pass, it was, it just was natural that we had to have more than one service. The moment that people found out he passed, everyone wanted to do something. He was raised in Pennsylvania, and all the people from Pennsylvania, in fact, were calling, and they set up another whole service for him in Pennsylvania that we didn't do, that they set up for us to honor him as well. And so he had a service here in Florida where all the people he was close to and loved him here, but the people in Pennsylvania on their own planned and did all that to have another service for him. And of course we were all there, and the place where they had it could hold 100 people, and it was packed. People were standing in the back all around. Just another testament to who he was, that that many people got together made that happen, and people came out to honor and celebrate him from both Florida and in Pennsylvania as well. And it was really nice to see, and I kept saying then, he would just be so happy and so in awe, because he never saw himself, quote, as, popular, or, that many people would do that kind of thing for him, that he wasn't not deserving, but just that he was just a normal, regular guy to himself, but he was so much more.
Yeah, and he loved people, and he loved his family. That's it.
A lot of the family came in from different parts of the country, and more than one kept saying, who's going to keep the family together now? And to me, that really sums up who he was. He was a true people person. He was very family oriented, and he truly cared. So when we decided to, do some projects together, he was in 100%. And, you really can't ask for more than that from a friend, a partner, or anybody for that matter. He really, really got involved. So he taught me a lot. I might have been the teacher, but he taught me a lot.
No, I think it's really great that there are so. I mean, I already knew Dayvin was one of those people that it's just. I mean, he touched people's lives all over the place. Even single time interactions, like people would remember him fondly. And so I kind of always knew that with him, that he was definitely a people person and people were drawn to him. But when he did die, and we basically did like the arrangements here, but there was such like an outpour from people in other places, like in Pennsylvania where he had mostly grown up, that we had to do 2 services. We did the one here for friends and family that were here, which was a plethora in and of itself. But then going back to Altoona, which I left when I was 9, so it was not really a big part of my history. But going back to Altoona, and the pomp and circumstance that happened for him there was a little. I can't even think of a good enough word. It was beautiful. I was a little awestruck. Not only seeing people that he kept up with but hadn't really seen in a long time all showing up. People that I didn't know or that I vaguely remembered from pulling their hair when I was a child, but that so many people came out from 2 different states and had so much to say and so many things, and how emotional people were, and how, I mean, not just the sheer volume of people, but the deep level of connection that people had to my brother was awe-inspiring. It was just knowing that a human can touch that many people on that kind of level without anything, he didn't have anything to give them other than himself. So that was kind of interesting for me, being such a kind of a more of a, not a pessimist, but someone who doesn't always think that the world has a good place to go, or that people have a capacity to be better. He enjoyed proving me wrong constantly, and so that is one of the things I think that I will miss most, is being proven wrong that there is goodness in the world, and just seeing the impact he had on other people's lives without even trying. Yeah.
I have a small family, so I've not really had too many deaths that were close to me. But I'm also at the age where I understand death. I do believe death is a part of life. And I actually could accept his death. That, not to say didn't bother me, of course, it bothered me, it devastated me, but I understood it. What I couldn't grasp is the fact that I wasn't going to talk to him again. I wasn't going to see him again. What do you mean we're not working out again? What do you mean we're not going to go forward with our project? What do you mean he's gone? That was hard. I still struggle with that, to be honest. You know, I miss him almost every day. And I say that because I live down the road from where his funeral was. So I pass it by almost every day. I still have his picture hanging up in my living room. And so I think about him constantly, even all these years later. So it was, needless to say, a life-changing day. But I'm happy that we've moved on in the sense of a great way to honor his memory and to still be inspired by him even all these years later.
Just a message to him personally. It's the loss of your presence is felt probably in every state of the nation, somebody somewhere. You know what I mean? If they were to understand, it's just that type of impact that you have on people. So I have no problem with saying that I wish to be more like you every single day. Your faults included, because I mean they were part of you. Now, as I get stronger in my spirituality, which, you know, like I say, I believe you put me there, so I do appreciate that as well. I've learned to take, you know, all the positive out and leave the negative there, simply because, you know, longevity, life, and everlasting imprints that you could leave behind as you leave the world. Because the funny thing about it is, if I carry it on, I pass it to a generation the same way that you pass it to me. I don't know where you got it, but now I got it. You see how that works? So your legacy is definitely a carrying of some, you know what I mean? So it's very interesting to me, and I find that mind-blowing. And to Dayvin himself, I just want to say, man, thank you, man. We all appreciate you. We all love you. And, you know, we all still feel you, obviously. You're here. And to whoever made you, thank you to you as well.
He was killed in 2016, and then, of course, for me personally, all the wind went out of the sails. I had no interest in continuing, and it's taken me this many years up until today, which I'm talking to you right now in 2023. It took that long to be able to continue his legacy, if you will. There's a good reason why we named our place the Dayvin Center, to honor him, to be inspired by him, even though he's been gone for many years. He still inspires us, motivates us, and you know, we think it's a great name for our place. To lose a child at any age is a true travesty, tragedy, I mean, unspeakable. I don't know how people do it. And so as much as we're honoring Dayvin, I believe we're honoring his mother too. When we told her that we wanted to name our place the Dayvin Center, she just, you know, broke down and cried, and has asked me almost not like daily, but always, what can I do? What do you need? What can I do? And she was here at the grand opening, and I think we honor her, and the rest of his family, to that matter. He left a lot of people, you know, relatives, brother, aunts, uncles, and we honor them as much as we honor David.
I think David too would have said, or what he was about was for people to first know their truth, and then live it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and be who you are, not who someone else thinks you are or wants you to be,
Right.
because in the long run, it's not gonna be you or make you happy,
Right.
and only you can do that.
That's right. Only you can be you, so be the best you that you can be.
And he was that.
I think that the center is an awesome way to celebrate his life. I think that he would be so happy with what everybody's coming together and doing. I think it would really mean a lot to him.
This center, our vision is to be a true community center. So, being that I've been teaching Reiki here for, almost 25 years, I've been able to contact a lot of people, and without exception, every one of them said, "Oh, this is great. This is needed. You guys are doing a great thing. This is going to be super successful." And without realizing it, they're talking about the Dayvin influence. When I tell them the Dayvin story, they almost start crying right then, because it's so touching, and they're like, but they had said that they were going to be successful even before they knew his story. So you combine the two, a needed place inspired by someone that we all loved, we'll be successful.
I think so too. Do you have any other parting thoughts or anything else you'd like to share with us today about this?
Just that I hope to continue his legacy, memory, to inspire more people through him, through our work, who obviously will never meet him, but they will know who he is, and they'll know the inspiration he provides.
He lived for life.
And yeah, he loved life. He loved living. He loved, he didn't have a mansion and a big bank account, but he was rich. He was rich. I think he felt rich. He felt life was wonderful for him. And I know if he was able to get this center up when he was alive, that would have been the icing on the cake for him. We mentioned, I think, he was in a car accident, and he was thinking he was going to have a big payoff. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and he died shortly after. But that was, part of his dream, and here we are today, fulfilling, living. That was all of your dream as well as his. And here it is now today, the Dayvin Center.